Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Black Tea. This is, of course, the podcast that is all about Black women in advertising. I'm your host back again, Michelle Lawrence. Pleased to be here today with Oyinda Amu.
Hi, everybody.
It's so weird to call you Oyinda because I call you O all
I
the
know you can call me O here
I'm
too.
gonna
This
go back
works
to O
well.
just so
Yeah,
that
let's
I
go.
don't
Let's go
my
back to
brain
O.
doesn't explode. But please tell everyone else what you do and where you're based.
I am based in the New York area. What I do, what don't I do? I am a social media girly. I am a writer. I am a producer. I am a podcaster. I'm all of the things depending on the day because I was cursed to wear a lot of hats from very early on. And I do that proudly and happily because being a jack of all trades is just, it's lovely. I love that about myself.
First, I want to know, how did you find advertising?
It was a long road because I think that in some way I was always kind of in the space, sort of. I grew up with a father who was in the entertainment industry. And so I got a lot of visibility into like a lot of the inner workings of his career and what his publicist did for him and what his manager did for him.
Mhm.
And I would kind of like help with that process as well. And like from early, like I would just put my hands in whatever I could find. Like I was doing podcasts before podcasts were even a thing. I didn't know that they were called that, but like I was like filming interviews and like helping people kind of like start their businesses and do their social media and things like that. But I didn't know that that was a thing that I could do as a career. So it was just kind of like a fun, whatever sort of thing.
Mhm.
And fun fact, I went to undergrad and I was pre-med in undergrad because I had some sort of idea that I was going to be a doctor. And I come from a like creative household, right? So I don't have the typical like Nigerian
Okay.
family kind of
Mhm.
pressure to like do law or medicine or whatever. It wasn't until my little sister actually was in her program. The program name was Branding and Integrated Communications. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you have to go to grad school, but grad school changed my life, honestly. And it opened me up to this advertising space and all of the people in it and all of the people that had kind of like carved out space for themselves in the way that I wanted to do.
So from there, did you get your first advertising job? Was it like an internship situation? How'd you get your leg in the door?
I got my very first advertising job. I want to say my first year in grad. So this was like during COVID. So I was working remotely and it was at a traditional PR agency, which I think was a learning experience because I'm like, okay, I know that I don't want to do that. I think I was one of two Black women that were at the agency, one of two Black people that were at the agency. And it wasn't like a huge agency either, but two is a little, you know.
Mhm.
And it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was like diverse across the board. It was like the two of us and then, everyone else. And that impacted my experience heavily. You know what I mean? And because it was me who was in an entry level position and it was a senior VP who was the other Black person that was there.
So you
So
had
like
really access.
space, yeah. So it was, it was not a great experience, but I learned so much. And because I was really just thrown to the wolves and I had to do everything, I was doing social media, I was writing op-eds, I was pitching press, I was doing all of the things everywhere. So
Bring
it
it
allowed
back
me to
again.
exactly. I was doing all of the things and I was thrown around so much that it just really forced me to just kind of like, I was literally crossing things off my list. Like, okay, this is cool. I could do that. I hate doing this. I don't like pitching press. I don't like doing the media, all of those things. Like, I don't want to do that. Okay, so that's good. Crossed off my list. Again, because I didn't really have like an undergraduate background in any of this. So that was like school after school. And so
Mhm.
I really felt like I had that kind of like battery in my back and enough of a learning experience to be like, okay, well, I this is the end of this journey, and now I know what I want to do next.
And I think that happened the way that it was supposed to because you need a certain amount of maturity, emotional maturity to sort of look at all these diverse experiences that way and sort of use them as an opportunity to figure out, okay, what do I actually want? What do I like? What do I not like? As opposed to just being like mad that you had to do it.
I wouldn't call it a failure because it was just so necessary in like my journey. And so I don't regret it for a single second. And like again, like I now know like exactly what I want.
Over the course of not just that experience, but your career so far, How do you feel like your unique point of view as a Black woman has influenced the way that you kind of show up for work?
I think that identity is such a huge part of like literally everything I do and everything that I touch. I can't separate myself in that way. I don't compartmentalize. And I think because I was so exposed to like a predominantly white space so heavily with that first job, um, it just reinforced everything that I knew about myself and the way that I wanted to show up. I'm Nigerian. I was born and raised in Nigeria. I moved literally for college. So that was like a huge part of it where it's like I came here and it was literally I came in as someone who talked and who wrote and who communicated, you know what I mean? And like constantly being told that like people were somehow surprised by the fact that like I was so eloquent or that I had like this point of view or whatever. It's like I heard that so often that it could have gone a different way where that might have bogged me down a little bit, but it just made me want to show up more authentically as I continued. Um, and then because my understanding of Blackness is different because of the fact that I'm from a country where we were all Black, and then I had to come here and kind of like marry those two things and kind of like learn what Blackness meant for me as a Black woman existing in America.
Yeah.
Think because I was like in a boot camp of like, okay, this is like you now, and like this is all of the things that like affect you systematically. Um, it just really made me want to like just continue to just be exactly who I was and like not want to engage with anything that didn't have space for that. And obviously there were moments where I was uncertain and moments where I was like, okay, is this the right place to, exert myself in that way? Or if I can't be this, then maybe that's just not the space that I need to exist in.
Yeah.
And I know that that journey can be a lot longer for other people. I'm grateful that whoever the powers that be like gave me that sort of like fortitude to just be self-assured to an extent. I'm writing op-eds for white men in their 50s and 60s in finance and in tech and getting these backhanded compliments like they would have never thought it would like that it would be me who wrote that around like, I wonder what you mean by that.
Yeah.
And so it just made me want to like I just wanted to like push myself in people's faces more and just be like, ha, told you.
Yeah. And that's what I love about immigrants from predominantly Black countries is that y'all don't show up here with a lifetime of weight of being of being a minority that can be underestimated and looked down upon and deprived and oppressed. Y'all just come here Black and loving it,
With
going
a lot
down
of
the way.
audacity.
And
Yeah.
I love that energy because I think not only is it a lesson for the white people who encounter you and they learn that lesson, but I think it's also very inspiring for us to see as people, born in the States, who have sort of to different degrees internalized just that minority kind of frame of mind. And so it's always encouraging to see people who are just like unencumbered by that. And it's just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, this is just, we're awesome. We always have been. Are you new?
Yeah.
Like, I love that energy from y'all. And I think it's something that we all got to soak up. So love it. Having spent a little time in this game now, you've quickly shot your way up to a senior position. Is there any advice that you would give to new to advertising you?
I think one thing I've really learned is the importance of mentorship. Again, I'm a very headstrong person. Some would say know-it-all. And so I convinced myself from early on that I would be able to navigate all of this by myself. You know what I mean? And I have, right? However, I think back and like even thinking back to like right before I even started college, like if I had some, and I'm a first daughter, so it's not like I have like an older sibling or, a parent or anything like that that's kind of like done this before or done it in the way that I've done it. So I really didn't have a lot of guidance, and I think I could have done a better job of seeking out that guidance and seeking out mentors and asking questions because I think it would have changed a lot of things. That journey might have started a little earlier if I had known what to do or if I had had somebody's experience to kind of like reference. I think that my trajectory would have been a little different. I'm proud of everything that I've done, but mentorship is a really big thing that I'm now wanting to do for other people. The word mentorship can seem like big because it almost seems like someone has to take like this huge role in your life. And it doesn't have to be that. Like, could literally be someone that you touch base with like every few months just to let them know, like, okay, this is what I've been doing. This is what I've encountered. What do you have any similar experiences? What can I take from you? So yeah, mentorship is a big thing that I would like tell my past self to like seek out just a little bit more.
And I totally agree with that. And I think there's some also just big sister burden there that happens. I am fortunate to have an older sister, but she makes me very aware of the role that she, has played in just kind of trailblazing. And
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
my little sister should be, she
she's
needs
been
to thank the Lord every day for
breezing
what
through.
I've
You got
given
to make
her.
all the mistakes for her.
I literally did.
From all the second sisters to the first, we appreciate it, because it's that, and it's also, I think, just being not just a first child, but a first daughter particularly. Y'all have like the innate desire to just like handle it and to figure it out. And I wonder how it can wear on you sometimes. It makes me think of, okay, this is a stupid example, but my daughter has me listening to the Encanto soundtrack nonstop. But you know the song that Louisa does, the strong one, and she's about,
Yes.
if
Yes. That
you
is literally the
your
soundtrack for
sister.
Big Sisters everywhere.
Yeah, my sister is like, oh, my song every time she hears it. But I think that that whole idea of give it to your sister, I'll shoulder that burden. That is a nice way to think about if I could go back and kind of give that girl a hug and say, hey, reach out for some help. Like you don't have to shoulder all of this. I think it's great advice for folks who, maybe still have that opportunity to do that at this point in their careers. It's so important to also just take stock of what we have done well. And I feel like we don't often just take that moment to pat ourselves on our back. So I would love to know, what is a career goal that you set for yourself and have achieved?
Started a podcast with my little sister. I self-produced the show and we did a sold out like event. We had about, I think we had like 80 people show up. And it was like such a well curated event. And we got such great feedback. Everything turned out exactly as I wanted it to. Now I'm just kind of like, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, you can
I
produce
have
a
to
live
step,
version of
yeah,
Black Tea if you want. If you
and I will. And so now it's like, it's put so many things into perspective where I feel bolder. I feel more ready. And I think that that's the achievement for me is that kind of like switch in mindset of like, okay, what are all of the things that could go wrong versus like, what are all the things that could go right? And like, what version of like this big thing can we do?
Okay, so what's next for you?
I just want to work on projects that I feel like build community and whatever that ends up looking like in whatever role, I'm just really keen on doing work that's meaningful in the communities that I occupy. Whether that's like Black people, whether that's queer people, whether that's immigrants. I'm not attached to a title. I'm not attached to climbing the corporate ladder. The goals that I have set for myself are just more like, okay, what is the community impact of the work that I'm like putting my name to and like how does that make me feel? And so those are the things that I'm like kind of prioritizing right now. So
We hadn't even really dug into the social media manager of it all.
mhm.
I would love to hear a little bit about the impact that you feel that you've had in that space.
I am chronically online and I love social media. I know all of the things that we all hate about it, and every day I'm learning. I've worked with beauty brands, I've worked with nonprofits. I'm currently working with like a grassroots organization in New York as a social media manager. You might be a content creator here and you're a copywriter here and you're a designer here. Depending on who I'm working with, I'm wearing like different hats depending on what they need. It's strategy, it's also being like a numbers person on analytics and all of those types of things. There's such fluidity in it. I'm able to kind of like morph into different people and different whatevers because I do social. My superpower is being able to like engage with a lot of different people in terms of what they know. And that's what every brand says they want to do. They want to connect with people, they want to build communities. And being that person that can kind of like usher that in and like bringing new perspectives and saying like, hey, like maybe you haven't thought about this community because maybe they're not like the biggest or the loudest or whatever, but like this is a super interesting thing that I think you could tap into. The space is consistently changing. That's been cool to like navigate those changes in real time because it's like I love to be challenged and like these platforms are changing every day and like they're introducing things that no one asked for. And then you have to be the one that's like, okay, here's how we move with that. Here's some new ideas.
You mentioned it earlier, nuance, and I think, there's a lot of intersectionality going on with you. And so you have a lot of capacity for understanding and for empathy, and you're really putting that to work in your work, which is amazing. I love that you, without me having to like encourage you, you said, you know what, I'm good at a lot of shit.
I'm trying to do better at that. I was not good at that before. I was like the humble, like, no, this is not a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah,
But
no, like that's time's up for all of that. Like this is when we're going to be loud and good. Because people who are way less good are much louder.
very loud.
You know what I mean? So we have every right. Okay. So you're putting a lot out. What is going back in? What are you listening to and loving the sound of these days? Is there certain music? Is there certain podcasts? Is there certain silence? Is there certain sounds? What is kind of giving you life from the audio perspective?
Silence is a big one. I love that you mentioned that because I realized I don't have silent moments.
Mm.
I'm like consistently plugged into something and taking in something and synthesizing something. And I'm not a big me time girl. And so that's one thing that I've been like trying to do. One of my favorite podcasts ended and like that just like threw me for a loop. It's called Lovers and Friends with
Okay.
Shannon Boodram. If you haven't listened to it, there's like years of content to go listen to. She's an educator, specifically in like the sex and relationship space. Her ability as a conversationalist, specifically like having but facilitating conversations between people is like my favorite thing to do. So like whatever I can listen to that gets me into that space, I love. Also, if you haven't listened to I Said What I Said, it is basically like the biggest podcast out of Nigeria right now. And they do get into like a lot of like just kind of like systematic situations that are happening in Nigeria. And like there's a lot of like perspective that they give, but it's also just fun. And I like when people are able to like marry those two things where they can get into nuanced conversations, but like, hold attention. So that's another thing that I listen to decompress. But I also listen to a lot of like 70s, 80s, like disco funk because like that I can just like la-di-da walk around, dance a little bit, and I don't get too many of those moments. So that's like my carefree like moment.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing. Your story is so cool. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I will be watching and rooting for you every step of the way. Thank you so much for coming on Black Tea.
Thank you for having me on. This was so fun. And I will take you up on producing the live version of this show because, hey,
Let's do
call
it.
me. You know
Say
where I
less.
work.
I sure do. And thank you all for watching this episode of Black Tea. We really appreciate it. Please go to musebycleo.com/Black Tea to check out all of the other episodes in the catalog and follow us on Instagram at Sip Black Tea to find out about the episodes before they drop. And we'll see you next time. Bye.